Welcome to the boring country life that we love. Today is April 3rd, 2025, and this is my home kitchen garden. If you wanted to skip to the full garden tour, just go to the minutes marked at the bottom of the screen, and you can do that. Otherwise, I thought we would start out by chatting about spinach today. Weighing all the babble, the pros and the cons that you hear now about spinach, it's still a leafy green that we choose to eat often. We actually eat it more often than lettuce because it is rather versatile. When I first started gardening, this is one of the first leafy greens that I chose to focus on and conquer because we do use it so often, whether it's in salads or haystacks, lasagnas, smoothies. I also dehydrate the leaves and use those powders in different foods. Sometimes it's a way to sneak in healthy greens and the kids don't know it's there in your tomato sauces and even in the smoothies as well. I use fresh, frozen, or dehydrated in those. For a great tutorial on starting spinach from seed, I recommend Charles Dowding. He's over in England. He does a great job, and so I would refer you to him if you're just getting started and you've never planted spinach from seed before. It can be a little temperamental, I find. The soil has to be really rich. You have to have the right temperatures because spinach does not like hot weather. When you plant spinach will vary on your climate in your area. I'm in a zone 7A in Virginia. So for my friends that live in that area, this is what my annual spinach planting routine looks like. Beginning to mid-March, I will direct seed spinach. I don't do transplant spinach in spring because it tends to be a shorter growing season in the spring, because if it warms up really quick, your spinach is going to bolt. And that extra time that you would lose, which is usually around 2 weeks that you lose in growth because of the transplant shock, I don't like risking that. So in the spring, I will direct sow seeds. Early March usually, maybe mid-March, just depends on what the weather looks like. And then that comes up and I can harvest on that until it gets too warm and the spinach is going to bolt, which means go to seed. It will set its flowers and try to make seeds. And at that point, I will usually take the spinach out and feed the remainder to the chickens. That means in my area, I'm not going to be harvesting spinach during the summer. So what I usually do is I plant a good large section in the spring, so it's more than what we can eat fresh. That way I'm able to harvest extra for freezing and for dehydrating. That way throughout the summer, I still have spinach that I can put in other recipes. In our area, we get 2 seasons of the year that we can grow cold crops, the spring and the fall. So looking ahead, when you're in the middle of summer and you're really hot, that's when you're going to start thinking about your fall garden, because if you don't, you're going to miss the window of when you can plant those crops. I will do 2 different types of spinach in the fall. Well, not types, but 2 different ways of planting. I will seed start in a tray for transplants, and I will also direct seed. So the first thing I do is seed start in a tray, and I will do that probably early August, early to mid-August, because I can protect those seeds a little more instead of leaving them out in the heat. You do need to keep them wet while they germinate and grow, and that can be challenging in a Virginia August. So those will be transplanted in September, and then I can harvest from those all fall. And if it's a good fall and winter season, sometimes those plants will go all the way through winter, but we'll talk about that in a minute. I also direct sow seeds, usually sometime in September. And my plan for those seeds is not so much to harvest them that year, but to be able to harvest them late winter, early spring, which is what I'm doing right now. So the spinach that you see me harvesting now was actually planted in the fall of 2024. So the first crop that I transplant in September is going to get nice and large, and I'm going to harvest a lot, and I'm also going to be hopefully able to harvest more than what I need for fresh eating, so I can also freeze and dehydrate it. Because usually in the dead of winter, spinach plants won't continue to grow a lot, but they will stay alive. And so if you get a warm week in the 70s, your spinach might grow some, but then it'll just kind of go dormant and go back to sleep when it gets back cold again. So you can harvest some during the winter, but it just depends on what kind of weather you're getting. So the second crop that I direct seed, it's just so that it's a little younger when the winter comes in, because the seed that I started in August, it's going to be getting kind of old by November, and those plants might struggle a little more over the winter, whereas the seeds that I direct sowed in September are younger and stronger and can make it through a winter better. I have done both row covering and not row covering on the spinach, and I suppose it depends on the winter, but I think the spinach just does better not row covered. It handles the weather. The row cover can actually tend to get too hot, and that's something I have to go out more often in the winter and take off the spinach if we're having warm days. But if not, it can handle the weather. It doesn't mind the cold. The leaves are actually sweeter. You're going to get a sweeter flavor in them when there are cold nights and when there are frosts. It's something that the plant does to protect itself from the frost. It sends out like a plant version of antifreeze that you might, put in your car, but it's a plant version. So the roots send it up into the leaves to protect the plant from the cold, and it makes them much sweeter. You'll find the same thing happens with your brassicas, your kales, and then even carrots are sweeter when they're grown in the season where they're ripening where it's cold. So your fall carrots are going to taste sweeter generally than your spring and summer carrots. This is what my spinach looks like right now that I seeded in early March. Obviously, I'm not going to be getting any harvest from that for a little bit longer, but because I have plants that I started in the fall last year, I've been able to harvest spinach for many weeks now. Throughout the winter, I'll just harvest what I need as I need it. But when spring comes and the plants really take off and start to get really big, because the weather's warming again, then I'm going to harvest in bulk. Like that's actually what I'm doing right now, because I know, okay, let me go backwards. So I harvest a little bit as I need it throughout the winter. And now I know that these plants, because they have been growing since last year, they are going to go to seed once the weather gets really warm. And this week we actually have the next 3 days after today are supposed to be in the 80s. And I know these plants are ready to go to seed. And I actually want this section to go to seed because I want to save the seeds from it. These are Bloomsdale Longstanding. It's my favorite spinach. I've tried several different varieties. So because I want these to go to seed, I'm going to go ahead and do a really heavy harvest from these plants. I'm going to get everything I want because that will last me several weeks. It could be a month or two. And then I have spinach until that spring planting is ready to be harvested from. So everything that I was able to harvest today filled 8-gallon bags stuffed full. I think I put 3 or 4 in the fridge and 3 or 4 in the freezer. I don't plan on dehydrating because I have plenty of that from previous years. But this will get us through. And then I'm going to let these plants in the bigger bed where there's a bunch of them, I'm going to let them all go to seed. And then in the little small beds where there's fewer plants, I'm going to go ahead and cut those off at the dirt level and give the excess to the chickens. If I didn't totally exhaust the topic of spinach and you still have a question or two, I would love to help. So just let me know. If you have your own experiences with growing spinach or favorite ways you like to use it, I would also love to hear about that. Let's move on now to a tour of the entire kitchen garden. It was recorded the morning of April 1st. I believe we'd had a nice heavy rain the night before. Let's go take a look and see what's growing in April in Virginia. I don't feel like I've been doing a whole lot or working very often. Just once or twice, sometimes 3 times a week, I'm out here planting something or weeding something or getting some water lines set up. And this is just what it's come to over the last month, and God has been starting to grow lots of foods for us. But we will start with wall beds first. This is wall bed number 1. At the very end, I have lettuces that were seeded sometime back in February. I started those indoors and I transplanted them in March, and they are just now starting to take off and grow a little bit now that their roots are adjusted to the transplant. Behind the transplanted lettuce, I've got 2 little rows of spinach saved from my spinach seeds from previous years. And next to the transplanted lettuce, I have a little bed of lettuce that I seeded directly into these beds, and then a little bed of kale that I seeded directly into the beds. I just used the brick to mark where my different sections were while they were seeds, so I wouldn't double plant anything, but I can take those out now. Once the kale ends, I don't have anything planted here. These cages are potentially for some cayenne pepper plants that would go in at the end of May, but for now they're just placeholders. Further down, I have some crocus planted and some tulips. I think they were tulips that my children got me over the holiday season, and we'll see how they come up. This does not have to be their permanent bed. Actually, what happened was we got another puppy, and these walls are kind of low right here, and so it's very easy for the puppy to jump in and end up in my garden, and dogs are not allowed in the garden. So I had these old metal wall decorations that had been behind my bed for years. So I put them up so they would kind of look pretty or decorative, but they also create a little bit of a blockade to remind the puppy to not jump in the garden. And instead of putting a crop back there that I wouldn't be able to reach very easily, I went ahead and planted the flowers. So hopefully that will have a cute look when they come up growing behind there. Wall bed 2 has Yukon Gold potatoes, 2 rows, and they are starting to come up nicely. It looks like the middle of next week we should have a night that gets down to between 30 and 32 degrees. So I may row cover these just for that night. We'll see what the forecast actually is when that time comes. There's nothing planted in wall bed 3 yet, but hopefully it will be Roma tomatoes for the summer. In bed number 4, we have some superstar onions. And in number 5, if you remember last year, I filled this with strawberries and I let them multiply like crazy, and I never dug them up in the fall. So this spring, I dug them out, refilled the bed because the compost had sunk very low, and then I replanted some of the strawberries. The rest I just threw in the chicken pen. But this is what they're looking like now. We've got spinach from last fall that I need to harvest. And in wall bed number 7, we've got peas and their trellises. And when these peas are finished, there's going to be sweet potatoes in this bed afterwards, towards the end of May. The corner is wall bed 8, and the cages are set up in preparation for peppers. But there are onions, I think these are candy onions, that will be technically in front of the peppers because the sun, that's east and that's west. So the peppers will be getting the sun in the front. Sorry, the onions will be getting the sun in the front, and the peppers will be behind them. Wall bed 9 is currently empty. This is kale from last year in wall bed 10. Been clipping it out and sending it down to the chickens. There's a little bit left. 11 is empty other than a spinach plant. While we are down here at the bottom, our asparagus plants have been coming up. You probably can't see them in the sunlight. We've had at least 3 meals with asparagus so far. Let's see, here's some baby ones we are not harvesting. But you can't see much because we've been clipping them off as they come. And this is my oldest raised bed. And it is full of strawberries all the way down. All of the strawberries in my garden are ever-bearing strawberries. I wanted to have a continual harvest spring and fall, and whatever we don't eat fresh, we will freeze. This is another strawberry bed. This is, I think, wall number 12 that I planted last spring. I let them multiply like crazy, and then never did anything else with them. I didn't have time last fall. So you can see how the compost has sunk down a bit, probably about 1 block height. I did not get to these this spring to rip them out, refill the compost, and replant the strawberries. I will do that this fall. But last fall, see, this bed did used to run probably to that brick. I ripped out a lot of these strawberries, and that's what I filled these beds with. But the rest of wall bed 12 has nothing right now other than chamomile that's self-seeded from last year. And chamomile smells so delicious, and I love harvesting the flowers and having them for teas. So I'm just going to let them grow. If I get tired of them or want space for something else, I'll rip them out. But this bed is planned to have watermelon later in the spring. Wall bed 13 here has another chamomile and broccoli. Not a single one of my broccoli seedlings sprouted this year. So I bought all of my broccoli plants from a greenhouse. And this bed has nothing right now but chamomile. My numbers may be off. Whatever number this bed is, has spinach from last fall that I'm still harvesting, and the rest of the broccoli. This bed also has spinach from last fall. All of my spinaches that grew over winter were Bloomsdale longstanding. And I'm going to be letting this whole section go to seed to collect for next year. I have had great success growing my own spinach from my own seeds. Tucked in between some of the seed plants. So let me explain. So this whole bed is ever-bearing strawberries. And eventually when that spinach comes out, I'm letting the strawberries take over the whole thing. Where there are blanks in here, where some strawberry plants died from the winter, I have tucked in a few strawberry plants just so they can start to grow now. Let's see, more. Strawberry and spinach like to grow together. This soaker hose is my favorite. I'll have to do a little short on that maybe and explain it to you, but they're from Gardener's Supply or Garden Supply, I think. You can find them for about $10 cheaper, the exact same one on Amazon, but they are awesome soaker hoses. Really quality rubber. They don't leak or spray out where you don't want them to. They have great connections. They keep the pressure up. I'll show you later on over in a bed over here. I've got two 50-foot hoses connected together, and they still evenly distribute the water really well. So I am slowly buying more of these because they are expensive. Around $100 each for a 50-foot hose. But to me, that's worth it because I've been buying the cheap hoses that are $15, $20 each that barely last a season. Like, you could use them a second season if you're willing to use junk that's leaking everywhere. So a little more investment for a hose that's going to last a lot longer and also distribute the water well. The final wall bed here is empty other than a sage plant. I have cut back a lot of this. I should probably go ahead and cut back the rest that's dead. It's starting to come back to life on the bottom, so it survived the winter. So in this section inside the garden, there's 8 beds in the ground. Those are my ground beds, 1 through 8. And the only thing planted in any of those beds right now are peas along these vertical trellises. Oh, and I do also have parsley. I forgot to start those seeds earlier on, so I went ahead and bought 3 plants from a greenhouse. So I've got 3 little parsley plants. And the cages are set up in preparation for peppers. This setup for a watering hose is almost complete. My husband just has to ditch a garden hose from here to the spigot. And then hopefully I won't have to have hoses running everywhere, and that's less stuff to have to pick up before I mow the grass. And this hose can reach basically anywhere in the garden, and it's retractable. So we're going to be testing that out in the spring. This is ground bed 9. The echinacea is coming up from last year. The dahlia from this corner might be dead from digging this hole, but that's okay. There's a dahlia over there also. But the rest of the bed is all red potatoes. I have 2 different variety of red potatoes, or they were from 2 different sources. So I do have those posts laying down over there to separate them for me. The reds on this side tended to not be as pretty and smooth. I think they had a little more of the potato scab. It's not what it's called. But the reds on this side were pretty and smooth when harvested. So we're going to see if that comes out again this year. Because obviously I'd rather grow more of these potatoes if they keep coming out nicely. Ground bed 10. So along with my broccoli seedlings not sprouting at all, I had 2 cauliflowers sprout, and that was it. And I went ahead and bought cauliflower as well as the broccoli and the parsley, all from a greenhouse. End of February, sometime in March maybe. So the cauliflower is looking great. And there is a random chamomile plant tucked in the ground over there. And this is where I have 100 feet of that soaker hose that's doing terrific. And there are 2 different onions in here. In years past, I have planted my onions underneath and around my tomato plants. This year, I wanted to give them their own separate spot, let them have full access to the sun where the tomato plants won't be shading them quite as much, and see if that improves their growth. Ground bed 11 is all of our garlic that was started in the fall of 2024. We have hardneck and softneck garlic growing here, and we are still eating from last year's harvest. I still have some, like a half a bowlful in the kitchen. I did not dry any garlic this year. We've only been eating it fresh. Ground bed 12 is empty. Down here, I just have some of my extra irrigation lines laying there. There will be tomatoes in there, hopefully, by May. I tucked in the last of the onions here. It's a volunteer lettuce. I'm giving these garden stock planters 1 more year, and if they don't give me good production, I have a couple people in mind that I want to share them with. And it's not because I don't think they won't give other people good production. I just am not attentive enough to give these things the water that they need all summer. They literally need watering every single day during the summer, or whatever's in there just won't do well. And I'm not always out here every single day, and if I am, I don't always think to water them. I'm just used to the stuff in the ground and the beds. They stay maintained on their own pretty well. And I do have some friends that would probably benefit from these on their patios or porches, or that want to just grow small scale. Whereas for me, it's not really worth the trade-off of time. I don't have to put as much time into the stuff in the ground, and it produces for me. And I just don't want to babysit these. This is the last year I'm trying them. My youngest child said she really wanted to give them a try, and she will help with the watering. So that's why they're getting 1 more shot at life here. Ground bed 13 is Yukon Gold potatoes, and you can see they're coming up nicely. And it's the same in ground bed 14. Also Yukon Gold potatoes. So, that's it for what's growing in the garden. We'll take a peek at some of the flowering trees and a few other planting areas. Peach tree is just about finished flowering, and this also may be a last year of life for this peach tree. It looks very pretty every year, and it grows nice and large, and my husband has to prune it back, and we never really get any good fruit from it. I know some of it's because it's at the bottom of the hill. It's a little bit of a microclimate, and it stays colder down here. Last year would have been a really big harvest, but we had a cold, wet spring. Well, it wasn't that cold. It was a normal spring, but it was a very wet spring. And everything basically just rotted. Like there was a mold or a fungus on all the fruit. So this takes up a lot of space and we're not getting anything from it. It's been 6 years at least, probably longer. So this may be this peach tree's final year, and in its place, we would replace it with pears because the pear trees are doing terrific. This Asian pear has given us between, I don't know, 70 and 120 pears the last 2 falls. So we planted 2 more Asian pears, and this is a cook pear, which pollinates it. And he started giving us some nice pears last year. But if you can see, we have 2 little baby Asian pears here to go with that one. So it does take 6 or 7 years to get your pears, but when you do, they're delicious. So we thought we'd better plant them today because it's better than next year. We're starting to get the flowers on the blueberry plants. Hopefully we'll have a great crop of those again this year. What are you doing, Captain? What are you doing? Look at you looking all beautiful. Such a good boy. There are a few things growing in the greenhouse, not as much as I would like. The peppers have taken over a month to just now start coming up. The tomatoes have not yet, and I'm considering restarting tomato seeds. I don't know if there was a day or two where I let the soil dry out too much, or if it's just been too cold. Like maybe they will pop up, but who knows. In the back, I'm not going to go in because the fan's on. In the back, there are tomatoes that I started in February just to have 1 or 2 large ones when spring came. But my main crop is down here and over here, and they're not doing a whole lot. I do have some calendula started that I'm going to transplant out after the 30-degree nights are done. Exciting news! There are tomatoes coming up. No, Captain. Not exciting news for you. You can't come in. Go on back. Go on out. Good boy. Good boy. Thank you for going out of the greenhouse. Good boy. I know. Stay there. Look. Our first tomatoes. I can still grow seeds. I was really worried there. Okay, tomatoes are coming. Tomatoes are coming. They're coming. This little messy bed outside of the greenhouse has elecampane. And over here on the southern side of the house, I planted our extra asparagus that wouldn't fit in the beds down the hill. And we've been snapping those off and eating them as well. Usually I put vegetable crops in this bed. This year I decided my garden is big enough to hold everything I want to grow, and I want more spaces for flowers. So I transplanted 4 of my peony plants over here, and I'm really looking forward to getting flowers off those year after year. Dahlias are my favorite, zinnias second favorite, and I think the peonies may tie for second. They're probably third though, because they don't last for as long, but they're just so pretty. And that's a 5th peony. My husband did rip out... No, come over here, Captain. Come here. Come here, beautiful boy. Come here. Yeah. You and your ears are sticking up now. Show me your ears. Are your ears up? All right, my husband ripped out that giant bush that was here, and we don't have anything that's placed yet. There's a couple of old tulips coming up. Dahlias will come up here. I'm gonna have to do something about this. I think I'm not gonna be putting any water in this bird bath for a while because the puppy thinks it's his watering dish. Well, the little dogs do too, but the little dogs know better. The puppy doesn't. So he jumps in these pots to reach the water, and I don't want him doing that. That's our oregano. That's my thyme. That keeps getting knocked over. I put the cage on here to stop them from jumping in this one and getting up, and it works. I just didn't think I had to put cages in the other one until the puppy came. So more oregano, some onion chives, lots of chamomile, because I had chamomile over here last year and so the seeds dropped, and I'm letting them have at it. Onion chives, a lavender that may be dead. No, there's more coming up there, but I did buy one more plant. Chamomile, garlic chives, sage. And I'm going to top this off with dirt that had mint in it last year, and it looks like it's coming back again. I cut back the rosemary really, really heavy because the thing was as tall as me. Got some babies that rooted, some carnations. Not carnations. What are those things called? Mums? Chrysanthemums, that's what they are. I split this in half yesterday. And I got these little pretties from Lowe's. And I'll probably fill these extra spots with lettuce when summer comes, because this planter stays in shade for about half the day. And I don't have anything in these planters yet. But I usually do some lettuce over here midsummer, because this is the northern side of the house and I can grow lettuce here even in Virginia heat. The lemon and the orange trees have been set free from their winter spot in the garage. They will go in for a couple nights next week when it goes below 40-45 degrees. But for now, they are enjoying the sunshine. Some lemons, more lemons, and lemon flowers. I think we had about 10 oranges off this last winter. They were delicious, and I saved all the orange peels. So I have my own organic orange peels dehydrated, and I can grind them up to put in drinks or anywhere I want an orange flavor. And for memory's sake, this whole side of the shop was filled with wood last fall, and this is what's left after burning all winter. We do heat our home exclusively with our wood cook stove. We will turn the central air and heating on if we're gone out of town, because obviously there would be no one at home to put wood in the fire. But otherwise, this heats our home all winter, and I do a good bit of cooking on that stove as well. So this is the wood left after winter 2024-2025. These two peach trees are our oldest. This one's flowering again. This one appears to be dead. No problem, we planted 2 more peach trees last fall. You probably can't see them because they're little. There's one right there and one right there. The mulberry is bare at the moment, but it won't be long. She'll be covered in leaves, and for 6 weeks in the summer, she'll be covered in mulberry fruit, and we'll be eating all we can. So will our friends and family. And that's how all of our kitchen garden areas are looking at the beginning of April. This may have been a boring video to you, but I and my family really loved getting to look back during this past winter at all of the growing events from last summer and the summer before last, because during winter things are pretty brown and boring and dead looking, and it is so nice to remember it is going to look pretty again. Spring will come again, and we will see things growing, and there'll be new life. You got a peek at what's going on here, so tell me, what are you looking forward to in April?